Sanjouin is a love letter to life, a narrative told through moments of exploration and combat about how we shouldn't let our fears take away our ability to dream and smile.
Imagine a game that combines the epic and creative world-building aspect of a game like Hollow Knight, and also their simple, connected, and engaging combat system, besides the relationship and emotional story aspect of a game like Undertale, but mixing all that with the culture of the northeast region of Brazil. That is Sanjouin, the game I started to make, or what it was supposed to be. The game would be primarily focused on telling the history of the main character, the Foguinho, or Little Fire. This history has two sides. The first of them is about the perspective of the protagonist. In this fantasy world, there would exist magical entities related to some aspects of nature and the world itself, such as the ocean, death, and fire. And the fire is the main entity that the history is going to focus on, because one day he would be spreading his flame in a fire in a house on the interior where a little girl would be crying on the floor, and in the imminence of burning that girl, he could listen to her feelings and thoughts, and they were saying something like, "I don't want to die now, I'm afraid, I want to live, I want to do more." The entity of fire didn't understand those feelings because he didn't have them. As an entity in this world that represents fire itself, the fire never dies. It appears in one place, consumes the most that he can, only to vanish sometime later. In that instant that he was about to burn the girl, he decided to do something different. He decided to fuse with her, to try to live a new life, a mortal life. He wanted to understand them, the feelings, and the humans. After that, our protagonist was born, Foguinho, the Little Fire, the fusion between the entity of fire and a little girl that was left alone to die. A new life that combined experiences and powers of both parts, but unique as its own. Then Foguinho started to wander around, finding new villages and cities in her journey, to experience and understand life with her new eyes and feelings. The other side of this history is the side of the human's perspective of that journey. In this world, humans wouldn't be as we know them. Although they live in villages and cities, the reality is that in the night, creatures and monsters lurk and try to kill them. So the societies were formed based on the behavior of survival. They were somehow primitive because of that, afraid of the night and the terrors, until Foguinho appears. In her journey to understand what it is to live a life like a human, she looked for people to interact with, and she ended up using her fire abilities to combat the monsters who frighten those people, spreading confidence between them. In the end of this history, Foguinho would leave the humans and the future generations of them with the lessons of courage and joy that would be celebrated every year during the Fire Festival, made in her journey's memory. But, of course, for the sake of a good narrative, the history of Foguinho wouldn't be so easy and enjoyable all the time. It will start quiet and expositive, focusing on introduction of the world and the powers of her own. Then it will be warm, cozy, and exciting, with the development of the relationship with the inhabitants of the cities and the abilities used in combat against the enemies. And then it will be cold, dark, painful, when the protagonist would feel how it is to be abandoned, betrayed. She would feel the humans turning their backs to her. She would feel the sensation of her motivation and her will fading away. But she would recover it as she learns that even the difficulty and the harshness of life aren't great enough to surpass the beauty of it as a whole. And the history would feel hard, but worth fighting for. To follow these ups and downs in the history, the gameplay also focuses on exploration, interactions, relations, and combat. During the game, you would control Foguinho and move around with her to explore the map. Doing that, you could find some elements of the scenario to interact with, such as little objects that give you information about the world or the lore, items to collect, landscapes to appreciate, or NPCs. And talking about the NPCs, they would have name and personalities, as the few NPCs roaming around Hello Nest and some examples of monsters in the underworld. Trying to make connections with them and reinforce our relationship would unlock new interactions and events to the world as well as the new endlines to the history. After all, as the purpose of Foguinho's journey is to learn how to live like a human, the amount of interactions with them that you got would be substantially important in the final result. Hopefully, you, as a player, will be able to find out the most interactions you can during the time you have, because it won't be lasting forever. At night, the monsters that lurk in the shadows will appear and the combat phase will begin. In the combat, you will be able to select which Foguinho's fire abilities you want to use to defeat the enemies that will be arriving in rounds. If you are near a village or some important place with NPCs, protect them, otherwise, survive until the sun shines. Some combat nights would be special, with boss enemies in the final round, and each night could feel unique and progressive as you choose between using the same abilities over and over again or changing to new ones as you get access to them. Well, that covers almost everything that I could say about what I planned Sanjouin to be. Now talking about what it became. The game never really got close to having all the features the way I first intended. You could see by this gameplay that some mechanics were implemented, like the day and night cycle and the NPCs interactions, and a lot of them weren't, like the combat system, the music, and the events. When I considered the idea of it, I was looking to find some people to work on it with me, between talented artists and some close friends. But we weren't ready. Actually, I wasn't ready to deal with the reality of how hard it is to make a game, a dream of a game, come true. And after 6 months, little by little, I ended up giving up of this first interaction of the project. But not for good. I was persistent and trying another way of approach, a new project, smaller, focused on the combat experience. Even in this second interaction, which had received a lot of changes to make the dream happen, I still couldn't be anywhere close to what I wanted to make before I gave up on it again. Unfortunately. The thing is that making this game became a personal thing for me, a way of proving that I could make something incredible, that I could finish a project, that I could be amazing if I give myself enough to something that I care for. And all of that mentality actually ended up pushing me away from any joy I could have during the time I was making the project. And also the passion I had when I thought about the idea of the game. And the way I conceived the idea was very interesting. I once read in a book that life is humanity's greatest right. The first right on the list of human rights, perhaps the one thing that comes closest to a universal human constitution, is the right to life. Cultures, religions, discourse, and ideologies have always been based on life, and naturally, since life is our greatest right, death would be our greatest enemy. If there was a race that didn't have a life and death relationship like yours, for example, one that was reborn every time it died, it would probably develop habits and cultures very different from yours. And that led me to wonder, what would happen if this race and the human race interacted? Moving away from that standard concept of they will disagree and start a fight between the species, I think we could go for something like there will be a lot of strangeness between them and curiosity at the moment of the contact. Curiosity because one will not understand the other's fundamental principles. And for this curiosity and strangeness to become something more, the non-human race would need to have the empathy to understand why humans are the way they are, why they fear and hate death, why they cling so much to the passions of life. And that's where the basis for the game came from. A being from another race would come in contact with a human being and spend the game trying to understand why humans are the way they are. That way, I could explore at different moments in the game what we all experience a little during our journeys in life. The happiness, pleasure, and satisfaction of good moments. The sadness, anger, and difficulty of bads too. And finally, that will, desire, and need to keep moving forward because we only have one life. If you thought that this idea and the proposal of the game is motivational and inspiring, it's probably because the real meaning of it was to send a message to my friend who was suffering of a severe depression in his life. A message to any other person who was, is, or would to, even myself. A message to life, a lovely one. To remember us all that we shouldn't be afraid of fighting for it, because it's all we got.
So yeah, that was it. That was Sanjouin, the game I was planning to make but didn't work out. I hope you have enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a comment and I don't know, maybe subscribe, because the deal is that I'm trying to restart this project. I want to make this game again. I want to make it turn real, up to its expectations, up to what it was supposed to be. But I mean, not in a hard way with myself, as I said before. And that's it. I am Maurice, and I will be here posting some videos about the development of the new version of this Sanjouin project. Goodbye, guys.